Welcome to Forum 360. I'm your host, Leah Love, where we have a global outlook from a local view. Today we have a very exciting story today about redesigning education with Mr. Dominique Waters. Thank you for joining us today.
I am on fire and excited to be with you this morning. Thank you for the opportunity.
So you are the founder of Akron Sneaker Academy.
Yes.
So before we get into that, tell me, what is your background and experience in your educational path and journey that really excites you about learning in a different way?
Awesome. I think every story about myself starts here in Akron. You know, I'm an inner city kid from Akron, born and raised. You know, growing up with minimal resources, you got to be creative, you know, and you got to be resilient. So in my earlier years, I built those skills. But then as I matriculated through high school, I'm a proud graduate of Garfield High School, Golden Rams. And then I became a first generation college student at Central State University. So being at the only HBCU here in Ohio, that was a very unique educational experience, rooted in culture and rooted in lived experience. So I kind of got my early bearings there. And then from there, I was like, hey, I love singing, I love music. Back then I wanted to be this operatic baritone. But as a side gig, I worked retail. You know, and so, you know, just working jobs through school, I fell in love with it, just the people. And like you said, learning about different people as I sold to them and interacted with them, which then took off to a career in fashion, you know. So I worked a little bit in Columbus and then moved to New York City, where I really started to work in fashion. And you talk about learning on the fly, oh my gosh, I learned so much. So a lot of my experience have been through, you know, my professional career, being thrown in the fire and being adaptable. But, you know, working in fashion for about 10 years has really showed me that there's something to this fashion world that we can educate and inspire our young people with.
Okay. So what gaps do you think that there are in traditional education?
I think the biggest gap is we devote so much time in the in-school experience, rightfully so. But kids mostly spend their time out of school. There's studies that say about 70 to 75% of the time is spent out of school, whether it's summertime, whether it's weekends, whether it's holiday breaks. So how can we engage then? Because you know, when kids come back to school over the summer, there's a slump. It takes about a month for them to get acclimated to the, you know, the curriculum. So my program is dedicated to that out of school time learning, where I feel like not only just engaging them, but in a way that's relevant, the way that gets them excited. Because in school is a little structured. They got their metrics and their testing, but out of school, I can have a blast. I can cater the experience around what they need. So I think that's the biggest gap that I noticed so far, is just that we got to do more in the out of school time to really keep that academia going for our kids.
So what does the educational experience look like at the Akron Sneaker Academy?
So our flagship program is Sneaker Summer Camp, which is a 3-week camp. It's only dedicated to middle schoolers because, again, we got to start earlier. You know, my program really focused on that rising 6th grader, that student making from the jump from 5th to 6th grade. So it's a 3-week experience, but the kids are solving a problem as it pertains to sneakers. So the first year we did it last year, they partnered with Lucky Shoes, which is a Akron-based company. They designed a signature sneaker for Lucky. Mr. John Luck came in and pitched it to him. And then this year we were at the University of Akron, so their sneaker that they created had to cater to the needs of college students. So making it affordable, making it durable, making it, you know, comfortable for their commutes. So they interviewed college students. You know, we took them to the various. We gave them like a mock schedule. They had to like walk around like they were students. So they can understand how much walking it is. So sneakers is that vehicle to teach them things like problem-based learning and STEM, and it's very, very hands-on, and we lead through experience as well, so they have a good time as well, because it's summer camp.
Okay, so tell me again, why did you choose 5th graders going into 6th grade? Why is that an important age range?
We see that in communities where kids are underserved, not only are kids discouraged from STEM fields by 5th grade, but we see, as it pertains to Akron Public Schools, there's a lot of drop-off between 5th and 6th grade in science and math. There's just a gap, you know, kids are changing schools, you know, they're going to a bigger environment. So we look at the data based off the Ohio report card, we see a lot of drops in math and science. So how do we start to fill those gaps, particularly in that jump? Because if we get them there, they're usually set up for success through high school if we can get them there. But if not, there's a greater chance they won't like science, they won't think it's cool, they'll go away from it, you know, by by 8th grade. So that's probably the most critical jump is 5th and 6th grade when it comes to school.
Okay, we're going to get back to STEM because that's a very important area.
Yes.
But why sneakers?
Wow, great question. I feel like sneakers is a universal language. You know, when I was able to work at Louis Vuitton, I worked under a guy named Virgil Abloh. He was the first African-American designer ever hired at a luxury house. So when he came to Louis Vuitton, he's from Chicago, the Chicago area. He brought sneaker culture to like a luxury stage, and it really shocked me because he made the clients curious. He broke barriers with that, and he put sneaker culture on a global stage. So whether you are an inner city kid or a doctor or an engineer, sneakers is a part of your day-to-day life. And I'll say this, you know, when I came back home to Akron in 2020, during the pandemic, 2 years after that, I had a chance to work at a store called Unknown, which is co-founded by LeBron. And I engaged with so many youth through that. I mean, kids would come to my store daily and just stare at shoes. Like, I'd be like, is everything all right? They'd just be looking. So it is a source of empowerment for our kids and identity, especially those middle schoolers. So how do we reach them through what they love and teach them things like material science and things like that and leadership? So I just want to reach them where they are. And I think sneakers is that perfect vehicle.
Okay, so you mentioned leadership, entrepreneurship, and culture. Tell me a little bit more about those in regards to the program.
So again, like when it comes to sneaker culture, there's this big buzzword in our community around material science. We used to be the rubber capital, now we've transitioned to polymers.
I have not heard of material science, so.
Yeah, so that's our biggest industry, plastic and rubbers here in Greater Akron. But when I talk to kids about it, they don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. It's foreign to them. The word is a little bit too scientific. So when it comes to sneakers, you're looking at a lot of science. There's a reason why your sneakers are comfortable. There's a reason why your foot's able to breathe because of the mesh and the materials. Kids don't think about sneakers like that, but there's a lot of science in that too. And then we talk about culture, you know, culture really drives results. You have to make it relevant. You can't always lead with things like robotics or aerodynamics. Our kids are not maybe enthused about those things, but when I talk about sneakers, every kid's like, oh, I know that. I know the Jordan 4. I know the LeBron shoe. Now I have them. I have their attention. So through culture, we're able to reach them, but then through that STEM and that material science, I'm able to educate them in a cool way. So
I think I may need you to design a shoe for me because
I got you.
I've not found one that works great for me.
Absolutely.
So sometimes thinking about the kids, they may not feel seen. Take me back to a childhood moment or in your teen years that you felt that you were unseen or underestimated, and how that influences how you work with the kids today.
Wow, that's a great question. I feel like you come from the inner city of any community across our nation, there's a perception that comes with that. There is things that we deal with in our environment that are pretty unique. So I feel like when I got to high school, I felt like I kind of flew under the radar. Like I was always a good kid. I was always passionate about school. I loved being at school, but I felt like because of where I came from, maybe the way I dressed, you know, teachers maybe counted me out. Or if I acted out in class or was just being silly, it was like a negative thing versus like maybe I just wasn't engaged in the right way. So, you know, my grandma used to tell me I was, you know, very talkative growing up. So I would get in trouble for talking, but I was done with the work. I was ready to move on to the next thing. So a lot of our kids face that. They face environments where they feel like they're boxed in. And I was that kid too. So when I talk to the kids, you know, first of all, I lead with empathy. And I think it's important that before we start to teach them, how are you doing? You know, did you eat last night? You know, how was your morning? You know, so we have a lot of social emotional learning infused in our curriculum. But what I've learned and what I think is so cool is that the talent is there, you know, the innovation is there. Once you can get around all those other things and you start to really see and hear what they do, it's like, you guys can really do some cool stuff. So I feel like I see myself in those kids, like you said, and I don't think we should count them out too soon, especially in middle school. Like they're still developing. So I fight to really bring out that excellence in a way.
That's amazing. Yeah, a lot of kids, you would be surprised how much they have to go through.
Yeah.
If you've never had that as part of your own story, you would think that's not what any of these children have to go through.
Absolutely.
But before we can even get to the books and stuff, we got to get past a lot of that home life, and, you know, surrounding city life. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
All right, so for those who are pursuing their passions,
Okay.
and they have moments where they want to give up, because I can tell you there have been times, I don't know how many times I've closed my shop down.
Right.
What do you tell them to keep pushing through, to stay motivated when that moment arises?
So this is a big buzzword in the education community, the word resiliency. A lot of our kids today lack resiliency, and I think a lot of it's due to their technology upbringing. You know, they fail and then they get discouraged if they make a mistake. You know, I worked with some kids in Cleveland, actually, Boys and Girls Club, and I remember the boys, they were 5th and 6th graders, we were going through some stuff, and like they would just get so upset after their first try. I'm like, okay, how do I reach them? So for example, I think one, you have to lead with your own experience. I tell them all the time, like, I failed so much in my life, and prime example, you know, there was a time where I was working a career and I ended up, like with the unknown thing, it shut down. You know, it just stopped abruptly and was like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? So I was able to use my failures, what I say to the kids, as raw materials to finding another lane. You know, every failure, everything you experience is a setup for your alignment and your purpose. So resiliency is something that I think if we can start to teach our kids resiliency, not only can they excel academically, but in their personal life. Again, we understand the environments are very tough. So how do we get them to think beyond just that day? How do we get them to think about 5 years down the road or where they want to be when they're older and give them that vision? I think that's a great way to help them. But like you said, one failure, they're ready to give up. Yeah. So I'm big on resiliency. Like that's the number one critical skill that I'm teaching my kids, is that your life is just bigger than one failure, you know, and keep pushing and keep going through it to ultimately achieve your dreams.
You know what? My nephew was trying to play a game and he lost and he wanted to start crying, and I was like, go back until you win. But I think a lot of times we give, I know, right? I'm like, you gotta go.
Let's keep going.
Right, yeah. You know, but that resiliency is truly, you have to have, especially as we move into AI, you know, you're gonna have to pivot with different things. You can't just sit there and give up, essentially.
Because AI is going to keep going.
It's going to keep going. It's going to keep going.
That's such a good point. Such a good point.
So if you are just tuning in, we are talking to Dominic Waters, who is the founder of the Akron Sneaker Academy, about redesigning education. So let's get back to STEM.
Okay.
So with STEM, tell me a little bit more about how that plays into what you are doing and infusing the polymers industry and how all of that kind of can affect you or impact you.
Absolutely. So there's this concept that I'm working on with Akron Sneaker Academy, and I want you to kind of imagine this with me. You know when you get a fresh pair of kicks, right? You imagine if you're at grade school or even today, it's just that experience, right? You open the box, there's the tissue paper, you can it's like what's inside? There's like the little laces in a bag. I want to create a sneaker STEM kit. I want to create a STEM kit that comes in a shoebox, but inside there is a polymer activity where kids can learn about materials. There maybe it's like a design element where kids can kind of illustrate or create a sneaker right there in the box that's based off of like how they feel, their favorite things, kind of like some social emotional learning. And then the other thing that I think is critical to Akron is the history of sneaker culture. How do we infuse that into this STEM kit? Because Chuck Taylor played here in Akron. You know, LeBron James, of course, is from Akron. And then the PF Flyer from the movie Sandlot was created here in Akron. So we have a little bit of sauce when it comes to sneaker culture, but through that culturally relevant approach, there could be a hands-on activity for kids to do in school or at home with their parents. You know what I mean? How do we get the parents involved and excited? So if your kid brings home a shoebox and they're assembling a sneaker activity, now the parent is excited about it too. So I think with STEM, we got to find different innovations within that and not feel like there's just one path to it. Because with sneaker culture, there's a lot of different ways to infuse STEM in a way that gets the kids excited about it. So look out for the, I'm calling it the soul box. So look out for that. Yeah, I already got a name for it.
Oh,
yes,
you got a sneak peek. Okay.
You can tell about it. No, I'm excited about it.
Okay, so just to explain for people, just to break down the terminology, what is polymers and a little bit deeper of how those even play into sneakers?
Absolutely. So Akron, again, was once the rubber capital of the world. You know, we had Goodyear, Firestone, all these wonderful industries. Now, as we have looked into this new future, polymers are a huge thing. You know, at the University of Akron, It's the #1 polymer program. And when they talk about polymers from an industry perspective, it's rubber and plastic. Those are the 2 main polymers. But polymers live in our clothing, things like cotton, things like mesh, things like styrofoam. Those are all synthesis of polymers. And so I think the industry is focused on those 2, but with my program, I kind of open up a wide net, because at the end of the day, in our sneaker, if a pair of sneakers has so many different things that live inside of it that help the sneaker to function. So when we talk about polymer, it is a material science industry. Akron has about 3,500 polymer companies in this region.
Wow.
But again, when I talk to people about that, they don't know about it. And I was at a conference last Friday. There is such a need for jobs to be filled in the next 5 to 10 years. The workforce is aging out, 55 and up. These people are retiring, they're just older. So it's like there is a gap and a need in our community to get more kids jobs, but also start to build that pathway. We can't just fill jobs right now. We have to start earlier so by the time a kid's a senior, they want to go work in that industry. And I'll share this quick story. When I was younger, I went to a school called Harris Elementary on the north side, and I remember Goodyear came in and resurfaced our whole playground with recycled tires. And like, it was a big thing, you're in elementary school, it was like, what? And so they shut the park down for a couple of days, and then we saw them out there working, and then we came outside and it was like, it smelled like tires, and we were walking around, it was like all bouncy. I was like, it's just literally, that's a core memory of mine. Yeah. But it's all materials and polymers. So it's like, how do we create those cultural moments, those lived experience moments for our youth through this Six Sneaker initiative?
I love it. I love it. Speaking of stories.
Yes, tell me.
Do you have, I'm sure we all have a person, a moment with your kids that has impacted and continued to shape what you do?
Oh, gosh, I have so many. There was one moment that it rocked me. It really did. I had the pleasure of working with Girl Scouts this past summer up at their brand new STEM center, which is, have you been there?
No,
oh,
but I've
it's
heard about
phenomenal,
it. Yeah.
phenomenal. So I worked with about 5 girls for like a 4-day camp through sneakers. And we did things like the sneaker science lab. They cut up a pair of sneakers. We did like this manufacturing activity where they had to like assemble things and ship it to different So it was very immersive. So at the end of camp, I did like a survey just to get some data and collect some feedback. And there was a 5th grader, her name was May. And the question was, what is your biggest takeaway from this program? And she said, she called me Coach Dom. She said, Coach Dom actually listens to me when I tell him what I did this morning, he actually cares. And I'm like, out of all the things that we did this week, that's what stood out to you the most? And it just rocked me because, yes, I have this passion for education, but like you said, these kids want to be seen. They want to be seen, especially young girls. They're not seen all the time in science and STEM. So that lit a fire into me for what I'm going to do in the future. Like, we got to see our kids through this experience. So shout out to May. She really just humbled me with that, but I think set a foundation for how I want to be in the future.
Okay, 3 to 5 years from now, what does Sneaker Academy look like?
See, I don't want to alarm people.
I know, right?
I have a vision, for example.
Okay.
In Cleveland, we have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? In Canton, we have the Football Hall of Fame. What if Akron had a sneaker Hall of Fame, a sneaker innovation here, right in the heart of downtown Akron? That's really what I think is needed. It could be a design center. It could be a polymer center. You can actually design your shoe there and take it with you that day, based off of our resources. It could be a history archive of sneakers, talking about like the people I mentioned that are from Akron. And a place to have community. Because we know young people are not really coming downtown in the waves that we want them to do. We got to give them a reason. But this could be something that's cool for Akron, but it could be a global attraction. Sneaker culture is in all facets of the world, whether it's Europe and Asia and Africa. People will come to check that out, and it doesn't exist right now. So we got to get on this. So in the next 5 years, Akron can be reimagined, and I think we can have a place for young people to thrive for sure.
Okay, so I am ashamed that I think the last pair of sneakers I got was K-Swiss.
You know what? K-Swiss had a run.
It was a good run. My white sneakers.
You took me back about 15 years with that.
But you did just mention one thing about the resources and gaps. So I know as a kid, we used to have like the Urban League. We had a lot of after-school programs. A lot of that is getting cut, right? So what can our community do to kind of help support that and fill in some of those gaps that you see? And what do you see as some of those gaps that could be filled?
That's a great question, and we talk about this a lot. You know, there's an organization called Youth Success Summit that's here in our community that really pulls all the out-of-school type programming together, and we're having great discussion around like, hey, what does that climate look like when things are getting cut? But I think what we need to do is we need to dig in a little deeper. We need to not be discouraged by what we see around us. We have to be resilient and not think that everything pertains to like the national and federal climate. There's a lot of resources locally. We have great foundations, whether it's GAR or Akron Community Foundation or Huntington Bank Akron, that can invest. But I think we need to actually do more from an individual standpoint. We have to start to set aside resources to support these organizations. Like, are you donating monthly to a nonprofit? You know, do you have something that you give? Because that individual donorship lacks a little bit in the nonprofit world. How do we start to up that? And how do we start to collectively fundraise for stuff like this? So again, everything requires some innovation, and we have to look at it differently. But the cool thing, I think we're still on the right track, despite what we may see in the neighboring communities and also the federal climate.
So first step is take a look at what you are actually supporting and giving and donating
Absolutely.
to.
Everybody should be at least giving to one cause that they care about on a monthly basis, because this work is so critical to the future of our community. And we can't just say, hey, it's Akron Sneaker Academy's problem or it's Urban League's problem. It's all of our problem when we're all here in Akron trying to make it a better place.
And, you know, and the important part about that too is it's not just money. It can be time. It could be connections that
Absolutely.
you can provide to the place, any other resources that you can do. So, you know, not getting so focused on that it just has to be money. Time, to me, has always been like the most impactful, because I get money back. You don't get time back once you spend it. So that is like so expensive to me and it's more impactful because that connection of being seen and seeing somebody and really hearing them.
I had about, this summer we had about 35 kids, but I had about 12 volunteers that were high school and college students.
Okay.
And you talk about time, they dedicated 3 weeks of their summer to come hang out and contribute. And they made the experience. So again, like you're saying, I love that, because time is the big, especially in my world. I'm a grassroots nonprofit. I need a lot of hands, but that's a great first step. And these are high school kids already paying it forward, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome to see. Okay, so one of your students is standing here today. They're graduating from college, right? And they are explaining how Akron Sneaker Academy changed their life.
Wow.
What do you hope they would say?
I truly hope that any student that matriculates through the program will say that they had a path to opportunity. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want to create for kids. We tell kids all the time, oh, there's opportunity. You can be someone someday. You can do this. But where's that path? You know, we don't have a direct path, not just to the polymer industry, but to success. So Akron Sneaker Academy, I'm not saying everybody's going to design sneakers. I'm not saying everybody's going to be, you know, a polymer scientist, but they may be a doctor. They may be a lawyer. They may be an athlete. But I want to give them a pathway and say, hey, if you stick with this, you can be successful not only in your professional field, but personally and through life. So I hope that any kid, wow, you're making me feel a little old, but that will come back, say that they were thankful for that pathway to whatever they're going to do. Because I want everyone to be successful in their own field.
Amazing. All right, now, what is your favorite sneaker and
gosh.
why?
Oh, I go back and forth with this because, again, I'm from Akron. So I'll never forget that LeBron 1 that came out in 2003. But my all-time favorite sneaker is the all-white, low-top Air Force 1. It just doesn't get any more pristine than that. The Air Force 1 is still the #1 selling shoe at Nike, but it's comfortable. And I say this all the time, but when I was a kid, when you don't have much, when I got a fresh pair of white Air Force 1s for school, you might as well not talk to me for a couple of days, because it made me feel like I can achieve. It made me feel like I was on the same playing field. It made me feel like I was fresh. My feet were comfortable. My mind was fresh. And I think, again, a lot of our kids had that same, you know, kind of mantra. So all white Air Force 1s. I actually need another pair. They can get dirty and they're cool. You know what I mean? They're fine. You know, you can kind of beat them up a little bit. But yeah, that's my favorite sneaker of all time.
I don't know what it is about a nice, clean white shoe, but it really does change your whole everything.
Your K-Swiss, right?
Yes. It changes everything for you.
I love it. So yeah.
Okay, and then last question.
Yes.
Favorite place in Akron or favorite hobby in Akron?
Akron is such a special place, and I'm so happy to be at home. I think my favorite place in Akron, have you been to the Northside Marketplace? So they have a speakeasy there.
Okay.
That's very kind of underrated, charming, quaint, cozy. So I like to take guests there when they visit. So I think Northside Marketplace is kind of becoming my favorite area. They have Noms there. They have the Planner's Place there. It's up and coming, but it's adjacent to downtown, so it kind of has that little, niche to it. But also Luigi's is there too, which is an Akron staple. So I encourage people to go visit the Northside Marketplace and partake. My favorite activity, Sneaker Academy. It's my favorite activity.
Of course. Okay.
I wake up and do it every day.
Okay, last 20 seconds. I did lie. I had one more question. Last
Yes,
20
please,
seconds.
please.
What is your favorite book or educational resource that has kind of helped guide you?
The single book that changed my life is The Alchemist.
Okay.
I read that book back in 14, 15. I read it in one sitting, and it's all about the pursuit of your dreams and that journey.
Hands down.
Hands down, the best book I've ever read, so I encourage you guys to read it. It's an easy read. It took me a few hours, but yeah, that book set me up on this journey that I am now today.
And what is your website address for people if they want to reach you?
It is www.akronsneakeracademy.org. You can follow us on Instagram at Akron Sneaker Academy and Facebook Akron Sneaker Academy. So please join us. We would love all the support.
Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you so much for your insights. I am your host, Leah Love, and this is Forum 360, where we have a global outlook from a local view. Have a great week.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.